Ladies and gentlemen, the Football Scoop podcast is back. We're here to talk about amazing games that happened in Week 8. Maybe look forward a little bit to Week 9, but golly, Week 8 set the stage for the rest of the season. And I've got the Football Scoop, the whole staff with me. I got Doug Samuels, greatest college high school football coach that I know personally real well. And then college football experts, John Bryce, Zach Barnett. John Bryce, I'm going to start with you because this game was at 11 a.m. It was Penn State, Ohio State, had major implications for the rest of the season. Three of us picked Penn State. One guy was smart enough to pick Ohio State. We don't want to talk about picks. It's weird. John Bryce is now in the lead. God bless the man. Won last year. I'm going to have to track him down and beat him this year. It'd be weird. It'd be ugly. It'd be bloody. But anyway, John Bryce, Ohio State wins the game. Tell me about it.
Look, Penn State, and Zach made this point, he was really concerned about Penn State's explosives or lack thereof on offense. I just thought that whether they were explosive or not, I thought they would be able to score enough to beat an Ohio State team that I think is by far the most vulnerable that Ryan Day has fielded. It does not have the same offensive firepower. Now it's playing with much better defense. I think it calls into all the fair questions about Penn State and James Franklin, and are they just a nice, really good program, and is that where they're destined to stay, especially as long as Ryan Day is at Ohio State and Jim Harbaugh is at Michigan? It's an absolutely fair question to ask. I do think in pointing out his record in all these road games or against ranked teams, I think almost every single time he's lost those games, he's been the underdog. So it hasn't necessarily been a stunner that he's lost these games. But look, Ohio State controlled this game. It was close early, but you never felt like Penn State was going to just strike and put it out of reach. And then when Penn State had the defensive touchdown called back early in the game, it completely shifted things around. You wonder what it could have been like for Penn State had Penn State ever played with a lead. But Penn State's offense was just atrocious, continues to be atrocious. James Franklin has made changes in recent years at the offensive coordinator spot. It still has not worked. And you've got a lot of talent. You've got one of the two best left tackles in college football on that Penn State line. You've got a couple of guys that are going to be NFL running backs on that line. You've got Drew Aller, the former five-star quarterback from Ohio, who this game meant so very much to him. He was in tears afterwards. So, absolute credit to Ohio State. I think the Jim Knowles 2.0 version is going really, really well for the Buckeyes. I think that's the difference for them. A year ago, if they couldn't score in high volume, or even the year before Knowles arrived, if they couldn't score in high volume, they didn't have much chance to win. Now they can win games very ugly, and they've done it twice against their two best opponents.
Yeah, John, I heard you mention the fact his record and the fact that he was an underdog. I've seen that talk out there since the game, and my rebuttal is, isn't that the problem? That anytime they go up against a top-tier opponent, they are the underdog. And so the question is, what does Penn State have to do to not be the underdog against Michigan, Ohio State, and others? And is James Franklin capable of getting them there?
It's quarterback play. And I come to this every year. I say, James, I don't know why, but quarterback development has just not been good under James Franklin, wherever he's been. And I really thought that was changing this year. I thought Drew showed some stuff early in the season. I thought he was going to be pretty good. And this game, he just wasn't. He wasn't great. And Penn State needs a quarterback to play great in big games. And it leads – well, that doesn't. But the Ohio State offense wasn't great either, to be honest. And Michigan is steamrolling people. Doug, give me some thoughts. Michigan, Ohio State, even if they don't cheat, straight up field. Michigan, Ohio State. Got any early thoughts on that one?
All things considered, I think Michigan is by far, I think Zach talked about it on our last podcast, one of the best football teams in the country right now. I believe their defense hasn't allowed a play from inside the 10-yard line or something all year. Like their defense is outstanding. They haven't allowed a first and goal all year long. I think when Jim Knowles was brought in, I think he said, it'd be 2 or 3 years before we get everything that we want to get in this defense in, and now we're starting to see the fruits of that labor. And even though Ohio State's strong on offense, I feel like the teeter-totter is starting to tilt to maybe Ohio State starting to be a more defensive-minded football team, because they're not going to score 35, 45 points a game like they have in the past few years. But, I also want to vindicate Penn State a little bit. I think Mike Yurcich is one of the top 25 offensive play callers in college football. Their quarterback's only a sophomore. He's got a lot of good football left in front of him. I know the knock on James Franklin is he hasn't won these type of games, but the Drew Aller kid he's gonna continue to develop. He'll be fine. 6'5", like 250 pounds. The dude's built like an NFL prospect already. Only a sophomore. He'll get better and better in Yurchich's system as the years go on. So Penn State's going to take that step. I really thought it was going to happen last weekend. It wasn't there. There's still a top 10 scoring offense in college football. They're not as bad as JB makes it seem.
All right, we can talk. We can go 10 minutes on all these games. I'm gonna say go short, podcast style. Washington did not look great against Arizona State. Arizona State played well, but Washington, did that worry anybody?
Yeah, I watched that game very intently. As Jess and I had a nice little weekend escape, and was really surprised to see how much Washington struggled offensively in that contest, especially because we've all been impressed, I think, with what Arizona State is doing and how it's fighting under Kenny Dillingham, despite being kneecapped by its own administration. But Washington looked really off kilter throughout the game on offense and just could not get anything going. I mean, it took the defensive touchdown to salt that thing away for the Huskies.
Yeah, we come off the talk last week where the big debate was Dan Lanning's 4th and 3, where Dan Lanning came out and said, I didn't think we could stop Washington, so it didn't matter where we got the ball. We went for it because if Michael Penix stepped back on the field, we were going to lose the game, and he did, and they did. And now Washington goes out and just lays an absolute egg, and so I dropped them from number 1 in my ballot. Not that anyone cares, but the question is, did Arizona State expose something that more talented opponents can then go back and do to Washington that can score more than 7 points? But if you're Washington, every championship team has a game like this, unless you're 2020 Alabama. And so the mark of a championship team is winning when you play bad, and they played an F game offensively and still managed to win. And so you're going to take something from that if you're Kalen DeBoer.
I think we all talked about how Oklahoma was going to have their hands full with UCF. It's just one of those games, for whatever reason, you knew UCF was going to give them everything they wanted and more, and they did. Oklahoma found a way. They're 7-0. Any thoughts on that one, Zach?
It's very similar to the Washington thing. Like, you'd think you'd come out in gangbusters after your biggest win in 2 years or whatever, an off week, but UCF on the road did not fold, did not submit, kept coming at them, and they had to stop a 2-point play. And now you got to go on the road to Kansas against a dynamic, really well-schooled offense when you're not going to have the home crowd behind you. So, Brent Venables came out and said that he's going to do a lot of yelling this week and was looking forward to doing a lot of yelling. Oklahoma had played close to flawless football until last Saturday. So it'll be interesting to see how they can bounce back against an offense that can hit OU with a lot of stuff UCF did.
I'm not going to say championship teams with Oklahoma, but you just said championship teams. I got to fight through a game like this with Washington. UCF, same thing. All right, Texas. Quinn Ewers goes down. Texas still gets the dub over Dana's squad. Dana really could have used that one. Any thoughts, Texas, going forward?
Yeah, massive holes in the secondary. I mean, anytime Houston wanted to run mesh, they ran mesh, and they found somebody wide open. And so a lot of consternation in Austin about why that was and how they can get that fixed. And then you obviously have your starting quarterback go down. So you're going to need to be able to lean on your run game, which did carry you home against Houston. BYU is not good at running the ball or stopping the run, which should be strengths for Texas. But can you run the ball when the opponent knows you want to run the ball with whether it's Malik or Arch? Neither one of those guys have played a meaningful snap in their college careers. Arch hasn't played one snap in his college career. So they should be able to handle BYU without Quinn. K-State comes to town. That's going to be a different story. That team is massively improved from where they were a couple weeks ago.
So I skipped over Duke, Florida State inadvertently. Good football game, to be honest. Florida State, founded in the fourth quarter. Any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big win for me to see from Florida State because it took a complete performance. It took a four-quarter performance, and Duke had a lot of the early momentum. So I think you not only saw the talent and skill of Florida State, but you saw a little bit of the Seminoles' mettle in that game, and I was impressed.
I don't know when Riley Leonard went down, but when we look back at this season, it's going to be, man, what could Duke have been if Riley Leonard was healthy all year round?
Yep.
I would love
He's
to
a
see
game
that
changer
game with him playing the whole time.
Agreed. Conversely, I think we all thought North Carolina was going to fall apart at some point. I hate to say that. But, geez, I didn't see it against Virginia. That's stunning.
Yeah, I don't know if fall apart is the phrase I would use, but we expected North Carolina to North Carolina. It's sort
to stumble,
of
right.
Yeah, it's Mac Brown's MO. Fair or not, Mac Brown will lose a game every year that he absolutely is not expected to lose. For the Virginia side of things, for that perspective, I know from talking with some people with the Who's this week that it was so huge for them to get a piece of tangible evidence. I think they'd had 3 or 4 losses this year by a single score, and they just needed something tangible to feel good about the program, the direction of the program, and where things are going. So it's a case where I believe North Carolina expected to show up and win the game pretty comfortably, and Virginia showed up needing a win, and that's the difference.
Dan Lanning's team rebounded very nice. I say rebounded. You know, they put Washington behind them, and they're moving forward. Washington State is not an easy win. Good job by the Ducks, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're Oregon, the parallels to the Texas-Oklahoma game where Texas came away losing, saying, you know, they got us today, but we're the better team, and we'll see them again. Texas didn't play like that against Houston. Oregon played like that. Like, we were the better team. They got us today. If we play them again, we'll take them. Like, if you came away, if anyone argues that Oregon is still the best team and the most complete team in the Pac-12, results aside, I think you're entirely justified in saying that.
I would like to point out, I think at the beginning of the year, at least JB and Zach said the Pac-12 was the best conference in college football. I think you can make an argument right now, just over the halfway point, that they're the most balanced. Like the bottom of that league in Arizona State, battling Washington to the wire. Washington State is not an easy out. Like you look at the SEC, and the bottom of that is pretty rough. But the Pac-12 is holding up really, really well.
He made me go there. So whenever you start to have another good conference, I have to bring up the SEC. So SEC Shorts is incredible this weekend when they talk about second half Alabama. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But let's talk. What did Nick Saban say at halftime in second half Alabama? Goodness.
I think it was settling down more than anything for the Tide. I know there's a lot of talk out there about penalties called or not called, thrown or not thrown in that game, and that's always going to be a subplot, especially when there's a perception out there, and until we have full-time college football officials, which I think it's unreal with the money on the line, the legalized gambling, all of that. If I may rant on an aside just a moment, that there's not full-time officials in college athletics at the highest level, particularly for football and men's basketball. And I also think that they would be better served if you had a national pool of officials and that you didn't have guys who just worked the SEC every week or the Big Ten every week or Pac-12, but that you cross officiated with these people. So I will say all of that, but Alabama just flat out executed Tennessee throughout the second half. It was glaring. Yes, there was a hold on the play call where Alabama scored moments into the second half. But the busted coverage, as somebody told me who was there, the busted coverage was worse than the hold because the guy was just wide open behind the entire Tennessee secondary. Joe Milton is a super good dude. His teammates love him, as we talked about last week. He's very, very talented. He has not proved to be overly skilled. He had an insane NFL touchdown throw to Squirrel White that opened the scoring in the game, and that was the highlight for Joe Milton. And he had some tough runs where he lowered the shoulder and went over some Alabama defenders. You could tell the game meant a lot to him. But Alabama just put it together, got back to who it has to be, let Milroe, I think, do a little bit more, which opened up some things in the throw game. They started throwing a little bit on some earlier downs that I think helped more, and they kept their season alive.
I think you lose the ground to stand on to complain about officiating when you drop a goose egg in the second half. I mean, be outscored 27-0 in the second half. You can't complain about officiating when you didn't do yourself any favors.
Yeah, and look, last year it was 17 flags to 6 in Neyland Stadium, 17 flags on Bama to Tennessee 6. So this stuff sort of evens it out. I'm not buying into all of that, other than to say I think we need universal full-time college officials.
Not a bad idea. All right, we're outside the top 10. I'm asked for quick hits on this. I was at Auburn. Ole Miss came to town. Ole Miss is a good football team. I thought there were opportunities for Ole Miss to stretch that lead, and they just didn't. Auburn is rebuilding, and Auburn's going to be good in the future. And I think Auburn could win their next 4 games. And they got Alabama at the end. Ole Miss beat them, by a little, and moving on. Utah, USC. Whew, buddy, USC's defense. Eesh, man, they're getting called out by their former players. That's not a great look. JB, you got any thoughts on the USC, Utah?
Yeah, I made reference to this before. I know that as Notre Dame prepared for its matchup with USC October 14th, the Notre Dame had studied intently among its film study the 2 games against Utah a year ago. And I think that Utah probably saw some validation in what Notre Dame did last weekend, and then followed up with it, 3 days ago, in doing the exact same thing to USC. And USC is so bad on defense right now. And I've had multiple coaches tell me this, and it requires more time than what I've devoted to it thus far. But they've made the point, go back and watch USC on defense when it's playing with a lead versus USC on defense when it's playing from behind. And even in early stages of the game, these coaches are adamant that you will see almost a split personality in how the USC defense plays, which I found really fascinating. But that's what it boils down to. They're looking a little bit like, in my opinion, the NFL's Buffalo Bills, and Buffalo asked Josh Allen to do everything, and that's their only hope. And USC asked Caleb Williams to do everything, and right now that's their only hope. And there's not. I know Lincoln Riley continually tries to say, just look, we're a much better defense than last year. Well, you're not. You're in the bottom 25 of defensive teams of the 130 that are out there, and your defense, in a lot of ways, is directly attributable to why you've lost 2 in a row.
Anybody done a welfare check on Shane Beamer?
I was going to, but I'm building a new studio so that when we get him on the pod, he doesn't complain about our facilities.
34-12 in Columbia, Missouri. Whew. You guys, JB, you've been touting them all season. You said Drink's team's legit, and they were very good. LSU went up there and got them. LSU had a lot of offense that day. But Drink's got a big one this week, yeah?
Yeah.
Or not this week, yeah.
Yeah, continuing to play well. 7 wins already. We talked on the pod last week. I said I think they can get to 8-9 wins, and you looked at their schedule and you said, 9 could be attainable. That would be a big year for them. Again, college football has never been more quarterback driven than what it is right now, and Brady Cook teaming up with Luther Burden is giving them a chance.
Yeah, I said big game this week. They're off, and then you got Georgia. Their next game is Georgia. That 2 weeks from now. As we're recording this, LSU hung all the points. I didn't really love that they continue to pour on Army, but whatever. Moving on. Air Force is absolutely legit and fun to watch. They remain undefeated after beating Navy. Anything else to say there? Good talk. Go ahead.
Just look, like I said it last week, I'll say it again this week. Troy Calhoun is flat out one of the best ball coaches anywhere. The dude has been an NFL offensive coordinator. He's done unprecedented things now with Air Force football over the last decade, especially when you talk about all the challenges that they have from an academic standpoint, from a time management and demand standpoint. The guy is just an elite, really, really good football coach, and is equally a good human being.
Tulane keeps finding wins. Love it. Moving on. Iowa, Minnesota. Maybe closes out there. Maybe we talk about 1 or 2 other ones real fast. Iowa, Minnesota. Anybody got thoughts on that one?
The phantom, poison or Peter and
fair catch,
fair catch signal. Watching that end game, I thought it was a terrible call. Should have been blown dead right there as soon as he touched it. They let it play out, which then just toys with the emotions of all the Iowa fans hungry for touchdowns. And then when you take a touchdown away from them, it's there was a lot of controversy about that. Did an article this morning where PJ Fleck said it's really not a controversy at all. Should have been blown dead right there, and that's the end of it. I didn't really realize that was the rule either. So I learned something in writing that article. You can't wave people off and then advance the ball. So I thought that was really interesting. But to lose a game like that, a defensive battle, that was a heartbreaker.
Touchdowns are a once-a-week affair in Iowa City, so to lose one is devastating.
A couple of quick hitters. JMU is legit. Did that at Marshall. It's the NCAA cannot stand behind it. I mean, they obviously are going to. Again, like we said earlier, the rules are the rules. But man, that rule just looks. As you move up, you should not have to wait 2 years. This is silly.
Maybe they could do a Tez Walker thing and say, "Hey, we've got new information you guys forgot to send to us, and now you're eligible." So the NCAA could always reverse course, but don't see that.
The thing that I go back to is the NCAA doesn't even run the bowl season. Like in the bowl season for the most part is Tuesday night games before crowds of hundreds in stadiums in Boca Raton, Florida. Like we can't let James Madison, a team that's one of the best in the entire country, participate in at least that is just silly.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Zach, because bowl attendance has hemorrhaged by and large in a number of bowls in recent years, particularly as the CFP has further entrenched itself. I mean, you have schools that are routinely losing money to go to bowl games because they're obligated to buy so many tickets, whether their fans buy those tickets or not. Imagine the bowl that would get to host JMU and that fan base. I mean, that fan base is part of the reason that JMU was able to make the climb up from FCS to FBS.
How about Mike Gundy's squad? After, they won their first two, and then they lose South Alabama and Iowa State. And since then, they beat Kansas State, Kansas, and at West Virginia. Well, what a turnaround there! Because there was some grumblings when they were 2-2.
Yeah, I think Mike Gundy thrives on rolling up his sleeves and getting into work at 5 a.m. and figuring out the problems. And obviously, he's really good at it, but he's had to do it a lot these past few years because Oklahoma State struggled, and then they probably should. But he settled on a quarterback, and he remembered that he has Ollie Gordon on his team. The Ollie Gordon's a high school quarterback who's like a 6'1", 220-pound force at running back. He got like 6 to 9 carries early in September, got like 29 on Saturday, and he's quite a cornerstone for that offense because he hammers people.
A couple of things I feel we've got to mention. Kansas State just was not even nice to TCU, 41-3, and just kicked them out and said, "Go home."
Every move it seems that Sonny Dykes has made since he got home from Glendale, Arizona, has been the wrong one. I mean, you go from a guy that had 100% approval rating with his fan base to now they're 4-4, and they're asking, are we even going to make a bowl game this season in Fort Worth?
Yeah, I was going to contend that 2023 TCU is like one of the old Florida Marlins teams after they won the World Series. Like it's like there's a fire sale and they're a shell of what they were the previous year. I know a lot of that was roster flip and quarterback play, but I am dubbing TCU the Florida/Miami Marlins of college football.
I never would have thought about that, but that's a great comparison.
Couple quick things real fast. Sean Elliott has just done amazing things at Georgia State this season. Kudos there. Got a nice quarterback play. Got to mention Ken Wilson getting his first win at Nevada. Been a rough season there. It's nice to see them. Brady Hoke's team. I've seen there's some history of Brady Hoke's teams doing this, and that doesn't bode well. And last but not least, FBS wise, we got to talk Miami Clemson. JB, you got any thoughts? Doug, you got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I've got thoughts in that Miami didn't have its standard starting quarterback in Van Dyke. found a way to win. Clemson, which has become all too familiar for the Tigers this year, found a way to lose once again in a game that the Tigers seem to have control, much like they did early or really into the second half against Florida State. The Tigers had every opportunity to win this game. And then when you have Cade Klubnik come out and say, I called my own number at the end. I thought I saw something that I liked. I appreciate Cade saying that. He certainly didn't have to, and it certainly takes a lot of burden off his coaches who are feeling some heat right now. But just bizarre. Things are just not clicking whatsoever in Clemson, as I borrow a term from Sam Pittman after the Hogs fired Dan Enos. But they're just not clicking, and I'm not sure how much they're going to click this year, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. And I believe there will be changes of significant sorts in the assistant coaching rankings there.
Yeah, I thought that was the best coordinator hire of the cycle, and I thought it would immediately elevate Clemson, and things have just not worked out for whatever reason. And the Klubnik making that admission after pulling the ball on the goal line. Great reminder that we're dealing with 20-year-old kids and not seasoned veterans. Like he brought deep down, subconsciously or consciously, it's not like he wanted to be a hero. And it didn't work out for him. Lastly, I want to plug UNLV. Barry Odom's at 6-1 right now. Brennan Marion is his offensive coordinator, doing some really creative stuff on offense. I don't think many of us would have put UNLV at 6-1 at this point in the year.
And let's quickly remember, especially Scott, you and I were really working this search hard. Let's remember how close Charlotte was with Barry Odom. And now think about how freaking happy UNLV is today with Barry Odom.
It's a big one. I agree. All right, last shout out. We picked the game. I was a little surprised that we all wound up on Montana State. Montana State, Sac State. This is in California at Sacramento. And number 2 versus number 3, FCS. And Montana State just brought the points. And a big win for those guys. It's going to be fun to watch FCS play out. The playoffs are coming, and it's great ball. Got to find more people watching those games.
Yeah, and Montana State set the tone early. I mean, Sac State scored in the first quarter, and then after that, Montana State really had complete control of this game and punctuated the win with a 3-touchdown fourth quarter on the road. That's a team that has some stability there, has some continuity there, brings back some key players on the offensive side of the ball especially, and frankly expects to win those games.
There is great football coming up this weekend, a couple of great games, but I'm gonna challenge you guys. If you're a real fan, Thursday night, if you watch Syracuse, Virginia Tech over Georgia State, Georgia Southern, you lose your fan card. We don't even know who you are anymore. You're not a real college football fan unless you live in upstate New York or Blacksburg, whatever.
What if I do the YouTube split screen?
Nope.
Doug's with me.
Football's football, man. Give it to me in all forms.
Yeah, Doug will have the split screen, but then he's also going to have his iPad right here watching all the film in the palm of his hand as he gets ready for the massive playoff contest. We got the faith, Doug.
Thanks, man.
Georgia State, Georgia Southern in Statesboro. This place is going to be fire. There's going to be more booze in the stadium. It's just going to be an incredible environment. I'm here for it. Thursday night football.
Gator.
Go America. I won't even say it. We're out of here. We're Football Scoop staff. Stay in touch. Tell everybody you know.